Hello. You're on the Storm to Truth channel. Enjoy your watching. I never thought I'd be the guy who gets played, but here we are. My name's Michael, and this is the story of how my wife, Lauren, used me, chewed me up, and left me out to dry. It all started pretty simply. I had a good job, better than most to be honest. Fresh out of college with a degree in mechanical engineering, I landed a high-paying job in the fuel supply industry. Things were looking great, and I had no shortage of attention from women. But I wasn't the kind of guy to settle down, not with so many options around. Then came Lauren. She wasn't just another pretty face. No, she was stunning. The kind of woman who could stop traffic just by walking down the street in those high heels she loved so much. Men would stare, and women would whisper. I met her at a corporate charity event, one of those big gala nights. Lauren won the Queen of the Runway award that night, and it wasn't hard to see why. Tall, blonde, and graceful, she could light up a room just by being there. After that night, I couldn't get her out of my head. I showed up at her door the next day with a bouquet of flowers, determined to make an impression. Her father, Frank, didn't seem too thrilled about me. He looked me over like I was some nobody who wasn't worthy of his daughter. But I didn't care. Lauren agreed to a date, and from that moment, I was hooked. We got married within the year, and for a while, it felt like a dream. We traveled, we laughed, and life seemed perfect. But looking back, it's painfully clear. Lauren married me for the life I could give her, not for who I was. 12 years into the marriage, things had changed. Lauren wasn't the same woman I married. At first, she worked a bit, mostly dabbling in real estate, but that didn't last long. She stopped working entirely and started living a life of luxury, one that I was paying for. Every time I suggested she might want to find something to do, even volunteer, she brushed it off. Whenever I brought up the idea of having kids, there was always some excuse. I'm not ready, she'd say, or I don't want to ruin my body. It hurt. I wanted a family, but I also didn't want to push her. I loved her too much to start a fight over it. So I kept my mouth shut, thinking maybe one day she'd change her mind. Our arguments became more frequent, but somehow I was always the one apologizing. I bought her expensive gifts to make up for things I hadn't even done wrong. I thought it would fix whatever was going on between us, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Lauren became more distant, more secretive, but I ignored it because, well, what else was I going to do? I thought maybe it was just a rough patch. That happens in marriages, right? Then came the night when everything really started to fall apart. It was a company party thrown by one of my colleagues for his birthday. The place was ridiculous. An upscale country house, complete with a spa, garden, and even a helipad. All the big names from the company were there, including Igor, one of the board members who was known for surviving the rough-and-tumble business world of the 90s. Igor arrived in style with a motorcade of cars and bodyguards, making quite the entrance. I realized I hadn't seen Lauren in a while, so I started looking around for her. When she finally showed up, she gave me some excuse about needing fresh air to clear her head. I had a headache, she said, so I went outside to get some quiet. It sounded believable enough, so I didn't question it. I wasn't the type to push. Not yet anyway. A week later, my phone rang. It was Lauren's father, Frank, calling. I should have known something was off when he started the conversation the way he always did, with an insult. "Hello, you spineless loser," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Frank had never liked me. In his mind, a real man should have served in the military, run his household with an iron fist, and only live by the principles he understood. To him, I was weak and undeserving of his daughter. I tried to brush it off like I always did. "Hello, Frank," I replied calmly, trying to keep things civil. But this time, he wasn't calling just to insult me. This time, he had something to say. "You're a cuckold, Michael," he spat, almost gleeful in his delivery. "Lauren's been seeing another man. A real man, not some soft guy like you. His name's Alex, and he's been working security for Igor." My heart sank. I didn't want to believe him, but there was something in his voice that made me listen. Frank wasn't just trying to get under my skin. This was different. "You know that company party you were at last week? The whole time you were inside, Lauren was out with Alex. They spent the night in his car, getting cozy." Frank sounded almost proud as he shared the news, like he was finally vindicated in his hatred for me. I sat there, frozen, my mind racing. It couldn't be true. Lauren wouldn't do that. Would she? If you have any self-respect left, Frank continued, you'll leave her. Let her marry Alex. They'll start a real family, have real kids, because it's clear you're not cut out for that. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tell him he was wrong. But I couldn't. I just sat there, letting the weight of his words crush me. For days, I sat on that phone call, replaying it in my head over and over again. I couldn't focus on anything else. Every time I looked at Lauren, all I could think about was Frank's words. You're a cuckold. It felt like poison, spreading through me, gnawing away at every memory we had. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. One evening, after dinner, I sat Lauren down. My hands were trembling, my heart racing, but I forced myself to ask her the question that had been eating me alive. Are you seeing someone else? My voice came out more shaken than I'd hoped. She stared at me, her green eyes wide with surprise. But there was something else there, something darker. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just looked at me as if deciding how much truth she wanted to share. Then she sighed, crossing her arms defensively. What are you talking about? You and Alex, I said, barely able to get the words out. Frank told me everything. The party, the time you spent together. For a second, just a brief flicker, I saw the guilt flash across her face, but she quickly masked it. Frank, she scoffed. You're seriously going to believe him? He's hated you from the beginning, Michael. Of course, he'd say something like that just to get in your head. But the way she deflected, the coldness in her tone, it didn't feel right. I pushed further. Then tell me the truth. Did you meet Alex at the party? Did something happen? Lauren's expression hardened. You're distant, Michael, she said, her voice sharp, turning the blame back on me. You're always working, always busy. I've been lonely. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to lie. Instead, she twisted it, made it my fault. I'm working to support us. I snapped, feeling the anger boil over. I've done everything for you, and this is how you repay me. She shrugged, her face emotionless. You work all the time, and I needed someone. Alex understands me in ways you don't. He's there for me. My hands clenched into fists, not out of rage at her, but because of the overwhelming pain. And all the times you said you weren't ready for kids? Was that just another lie? She tilted her head, almost indifferent. I didn't want to ruin my life, my body. And now I've found someone who sees things the way I do. That was it. The confirmation, the final crack in the illusion I had been living. Lauren didn't care about me, about us. She never had. It took everything in me to walk away from Lauren. After that confrontation, I knew there was nothing left to save. I didn't even sleep that night. The next morning, I filed for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only one that made sense. She had already betrayed me, and the life we'd built together was a lie. The divorce process was brutal. Lauren fought hard to keep everything. The house, the money, the lifestyle she'd grown so used to. She demanded a huge settlement, claiming she'd sacrificed her career and time for our marriage. I couldn't believe the nerve of her, but I wasn't about to roll over and let her take everything I'd worked for. In the end, I came out on top. The judge ruled in my favor, and Lauren didn't get the house or the massive payout she was hoping for. It was a small victory, but at least I wouldn't be paying for her mistakes any longer. The whole ordeal left me exhausted, drained both emotionally and mentally, but at least I had cut ties with her. Lauren moved on quickly after the divorce, just as Frank had predicted. She married Alex, the guy she had been sneaking around with. They had their dream wedding, and for a brief moment, it seemed like her life was picture perfect. But, as it turns out, Alex wasn't the man she thought he was. It didn't take long for things to fall apart. Alex had a nasty gambling habit, one Lauren never saw coming. He drained most of her savings, spent it all on high-stakes bets and nights out. On top of that, he developed a drinking problem, and their picture-perfect life quickly crumbled. Lauren tried to fix it, tried to control the situation, but it was already too late. Everything she thought she had with Alex was nothing more than a fragile fantasy, one that shattered faster than she could pick up the pieces. It was almost poetic watching from afar as everything fell apart for her. Karma, some might say. I wish I could say I walked away from all this without a scratch, but that wouldn't be true. Lauren took more from me than just time and money. She took pieces of me, my trust, my belief in love, the very foundation of who I thought I was. After 12 years of marriage, you don't just bounce back like nothing happened. I was left questioning everything. But time has a way of healing wounds, even the deepest ones. Slowly, I started putting the pieces of my life back together. I threw myself into my work, spent more time with friends I had neglected, and started focusing on myself for the first time in years. It wasn't easy, but little by little, I began to rebuild. Then, something unexpected happened. I met someone new. She wasn't like Lauren. She wasn't after material things or status. She was real, grounded, and most importantly, she cared about me for who I was, not for what I could give her. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I realized that the life I had with Lauren had been suffocating me, even before I knew she was cheating. As for Lauren, well, I heard through mutual friends that her perfect life with Alex didn't last long. After his gambling addiction bled them dry, Alex left her. He ran off, leaving her with nothing. Lauren tried to pick up the pieces, but it was too late. Everything she thought she had built, her marriage, her wealth, her so-called happiness, was gone. It's ironic, really. She married me for my money, thinking she could manipulate her way into the perfect life. But in the end, her greed was her downfall. And me? I've moved on. I'm happier now than I ever was with her. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you can't buy love, and you definitely can't build a life based on lies. It will come back to bite you, one way or another. I'm just glad I got out before it completely destroyed me. That's the end of the story. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in something, leave a comment under the video, like it, and subscribe to the channel so that you don't lose it. New videos every day. See you soon.